Right, well, here we are. I'm Matt Lina, and I'm going to make a valiant effort to teach you from scratch how to program. And so this first episode is barely going to touch programming at all. It's going to talk all about how to learn to program. And so there are different ways that different people go about doing it. And I'm going to try to save you time by letting you know what I would want to tell myself if I were starting from scratch, or what I would tell my kids if they were interested, or what I do tell people that are interested in starting how to code. First and foremost, we focus on concepts. Everybody cares about what language am I going to use, what frameworks am I going to use, what is the fancy new cool thing. And I'm going to tell you, it's not all about that. I know my brother says the framework makes the dream work, but that only works when it comes to people that already know what it is they're going to do. And if you're just learning how to program, those kinds of things can serve as a distraction. So your best bet is to pick a good language that teaches you the right kinds of skills that will be applicable across all different domains of programming. And when you do this learning, when you do this programming, you will need to focus on, okay, what is my data and what am I going to do with it? How do I structure my data? And so that's why I took this picture of the inside of somebody's fridge that I got off of Google Images or DuckDuckGo Images or whatever. You can see here we got some oranges and apples, and there we got some tomatoes and kiwis and limes, and those are in a drawer. And the reason they're in a drawer is probably to keep them at a particular level of humidity. It seems we have there some maybe chopped up peaches and spaghetti in containers. Okay, why are they in containers? Because they belong together, and it'd be unwieldy if you just had a bunch of peaches scattered across the refrigerator. Here we got some booze, and it seems like preserved lemon and all sorts of preserves over here up in the top. And that's nice to have all the preserves and stuff like that in one place, because you generally know, okay, I'm going to go get this stuff here. This looks like maybe some sort of a syrup and drinks and things like that. So you have all of the ingredients stuck in the refrigerator in a way that you can access them. And if we remember the names of different data structures, depending on how we would, say, fit items into a fridge, it's quite similar in terms of how we would fit zeros and ones into memory. And the better we structure our data, the easier it is to know what to do with it. So that's something to keep in our minds when we're writing our code. How are we structuring our data? So here we go. That one is done. Now, once you have the data, what do you do with it? Seriously. I mean, you have all this food in your fridge. What are you going to do with it? You're going to eat it, but maybe you're going to have to fry eggs. Maybe you're going to have to pour things out of bottles into cups. Maybe you're going to have to slice fruit. How many times are you going to slice it? Like, remember, you're talking to a very dumb machine, the computer is. And it will do only what you tell it to do. And so, as you're sticking things into the fridge and taking things out of the fridge, you need to pretend like you're talking to a very dumb robot that doesn't understand what it means to crack an egg, or to pour out cottage cheese, or to unscrew a bottle. You have to think about what algorithm you're trying to use. And then only after you have an idea of what it is you're trying to do, how you're structuring the data, what the general algorithm is, do you have any hope of actually writing a good program. And once you've written that program, you probably are going to want to make it better because your first iteration might not be all that good. Right? That's just the way it is. If everybody thinks that the first thing that they always write is perfect, whew, I know very few developers that even come close to that ideal, so we don't even we don't assume that it ever will be that way. Now, when we are learning these concepts, we don't learn these concepts in a vacuum. We need a language to use. Just like I'm talking to you in English here, and somebody else, for instance, my wife could go and talk to you in Finnish, or I could talk to you in Finnish, or my friend could talk to you in Spanish, whatever it might be, you need to have some language to communicate with the computer what you want it to do. And so you pick one. You don't pick a dumb one. You don't pick an esoteric one. You pick a mainstream language that does well in the industry. For the sake of this course, I'm going to pick Go or Golang. The reason is because it will teach you enough. It's a good teaching language. And in being able to work with Go, you will have a very good idea of how projects can be structured and how code can work well in the broader scheme of a big project. Because ultimately, when you wind up getting into this field, you have to work with a bunch of different people. And so Python code bases easily become unwieldy, and so we're not going to go that route, even though we technically could, because it's a pretty good introductory language. At the same time, we're not picking Java because Java has a lot of boilerplate and can get a little unwieldy. So we're going to try to pick a language that balances simplicity and ease of use with how effective it is. And so for all of our backend stuff, we're going to be using Go. I'm still actually trying to figure out what to use for front-end stuff. I have a couple different ideas, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but we're going to try to make it as straightforward and easy as possible when it comes to writing our front-end code too. When you learn a language, you need to learn its syntax. You need to learn how it is that you do different things that programmers need to do all the time. Programmers need to repeat tasks. Well, that's one of the reasons that we want them, right? If I'm here writing my numbers and I need to do 50 different calculations, but it's the same calculation 50 times, then maybe I would have a construct of a loop or recursion. If I need to have a statement that if I don't have enough eggs yet, go get more eggs. Well, that's an if-then statement. If you have lots of different choices of things you can choose from, you can use a switch statement. There are all these different things that look kind of the same amongst languages, or at least amongst languages of a similar category, and you need to learn those. But like I said, you can't learn them in a vacuum. You got to learn them in the context of whatever language. And so we're picking Golang. That's what we're going to start with. You also need to learn best practices. And this is probably one of the toughest things because you can write code that's understandable by a computer. And then in 5 days when you go back and look at it, you think, what was I thinking? I don't know what I was talking about. Or you're trying to show your code to somebody else and I'm confused. So giving proper names to things, formatting things so you can read it, processes called clean code are very important. And so we're going to make sure that as we are going through the process of learning Golang, we stick to clean coding fundamentals. We're going to make sure our code turns out well. We're going to make sure that people will be happy to read our code. Because our code is as much a communication with other software developers as it is a communication with the computer. And so, just like we love and care for our neighbors and our friends and so on, we also love and care for the people that have to touch the code after us. And so we decide we're going to engage in some best practices. And so now we're done talking about language. So we'll start by looking at Go. And technically we could go to, say, go.dev. And we could go to the Getting Started page, and I suppose we can go do that right now. They have this Get Started button at go.dev, and don't worry, all the links that you need will be down in the description. You can just click on that, and you go to the Get Started page, and it tells you how you can download Go, but it also it gives you the opportunity to use the Go Playground. So you can click on Go to Playground, and here you can run Go code in the browser. You don't need to worry about downloading anything to your machine yet. You can play around and learn Go in this context, and that's what I'm going to recommend that you do to get started as you try to get comfortable with coding. Don't get too stuck trying to install things on your machine, because that's where a lot of people go wrong. They wonder, oh, do I install this? Do I install that? What all do I install? I'm going to say, don't, just hold off a little bit. Don't install anything yet. Let's learn a bit more about the language. Learn a bit more about how things work. Get used to some very basic development. And then after we've gone through some examples, after we've gone and learned a bit of the basics, then we can go get our computer all ready to develop our software. So you can run things in our playground by hitting the Run button. And you can see here's our Hello World program. If I want to go and add some more lines, I can do that. Here I can do format.println. This is another line. Close the quote, close the parentheses, and I can run it again. Or I can click on Format. Let's say if I decide I want to do something, I want to be a dingly doof and just make my code ill-formatted, I can click on this Format button here and it brings it right back. Makes it easier for the next person to read. Then I can click on Run again, and we got Hello World. This is another line. Program exited. And so we'd be able to print whatever we want to the console in this Go Playground. So that's one way of learning and getting started. We can play around with that. Another way is to take a tour of Go. And we can just go through all this. And you can do this in your own time. I really wanted to show you the bread and butter of learning a language, and probably the best language introductory source I've ever found anywhere. I'm going to close these Go Playground stuff and go to gobyexample.com. I'll zoom in a little bit for you there. We start from Hello World, and there's even this little teeny gopher here in the corner. You can see the little gopher in the corner. You can actually click on it, and it will open a Go Playground to run whatever code is in that little box there. Now, I don't recommend doing that. What I recommend doing is actually going and having another browser window open where you go to go.dev. You get started, and then you open up your playground. And my recommendation is going to be that you type in everything by hand. You literally start here. Package, main, import, format, function, main, format.println, hello world. And you close your parentheses, and you can click on the format. It'll make everything look good. And then you can run that program. And then as you go and you do these examples, you go to your next example, values, and after that will be probably variables and constants and all sorts of things like that. You can just go here and type these out. I will tell you, this is very, very important to go through the process of typing all these things out as you're learning, because that will get it stuck in your fingers, and you will have an idea of what to expect when you type things out. Go through these exercises multiple times if you feel the need to, because this right here is the bread and butter. This is learning a new language. This is learning new vocabulary. This is learning new grammar. This is the process by which you understand what's going on. And this is how you will grow as a developer. Our next time, I'm actually not going to do development environment setup next time. I'm going to do go by example, values, variables, and constants. I'm going to go through our first few go by example lessons, which we can find here. I'm just going to go through values, variables, and constants. And rather than just sticking you with writing the text, which I think you should do, I'll explain to you what the format package is, how these strings are working, what's going on behind the scenes a little bit, so that you get a better understanding of what to expect when you're coding. That is all we have time for this time around. So I'll look forward to seeing you again, and wish you the very best in your playing around with Golang. Thank you much. Bye.